Again, ladies and gentlemen, here in Orlando, Florida, June 2022, with the Republican Assembly chapter in Orlando. And our next guest, Kris Jurski, is from We the People's Audit. And welcome to the Command Radio Show and AUN-TV,
Thank you very
Kris.
much.
Yes, such a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
Well, we've listened to Patrick Byrne and Michael Flynn and Sheriff Mack and others talk about the 2020 election.
Yeah.
You have worked hard on research on this.
Yeah.
In your own state of Florida.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Talk a little bit about what you've come up with and with We the People's Audit. We'd like to hear.
Yeah, the biggest thing, first I always prefix that I'm animated differently. I was born to two Polish immigrants. So I was born here in the United States, but being from Poland at the time of communism, I saw what communism can do to a country.
Wow.
And then fate would have it, I would marry a Venezuelan, and I watched her country get systematically dismantled.
Yes.
And the moment that happened in Venezuela, being a tech person, I knew right away that they were manufacturing the vote. I was basically stealing it. We researched it there in Venezuela for all these years.
Smartmatic.
Yeah,
Plays a
Smartmatic,
role in
exactly. And they were right here in Boca Raton, actually. The actual software was developed in Florida.
I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
it was down in Boca Raton in a small little office building. Yeah, so it was horrible to watch because essentially the one thing that happened there was the person that made the software had a plane crash on the way back to Miami, and people were systematically eliminated and assassinated if they spoke out against the election.
Right.
But the echoes were the same, like everything. The media was like marching, goose step. It was the most perfect election in the world.
Oh, yeah.
And then we also saw essentially the uniparty, which I call like the rigged boxing game, where it's like you see people that immediately concede. The one thing that gave me hope when I saw that, because I was terrified when it happened, obviously seeing what I know, I was like, wow, Trump didn't concede. And he's given us this opportunity to stand up and see what's going on here. So I searched my soul because I was terrified to stand up and try and do something. But I was like, I have this background in addresses and building CRM systems. I was like, I got to dive into the voter rolls and see what I can do.
Well, we've heard Dr. Frank. My wife and I were at the symposium in South Dakota back in August of last year.
He was one of the guys that inspired me too. He was
Oh,
an absolute hero.
That's amazing.
And he did incredible work here in all the states, especially Florida.
Yeah.
Right.
And the idea is those voter rolls, according to Dr. Frank, get padded just before an election, and right after an election, then they trim them down. But you have some incredible information for We the People,
Wow.
and
Disturbing patterns.
so
Like that.
book there, Disturbing Patterns in New Voter Registrations in Florida 2020, and talk about what you have discovered. And this is public information. We can get the voter rolls if you need the right for you.
Yep. Well, the one thing that we took was there was specifically what's called a legislative report. This was essentially the official record of the election. Very hard to understand because they update the voter rolls over and over and over again. So when Dr. Frank was talking about that drop off, I immediately saw that. I was like, we need a frozen time shot or time.
Yeah.
So we hunted down this official record, which was the 2020 election, and we were like, okay, this is the legislative report. They're standing by this count. Let's go through deep and see what happened.
Right.
So we essentially, that was our starting point. And one of the first things we discovered is probably the most troubling part of this analysis was this huge spike that happened right there a week before the election.
In registration.
Yeah, in
Show that
registrations.
to the camera.
Yeah.
People need to see that. I mean,
Although they're going to say, well, that's not uncommon, except just before registration. There is a window. You don't register 24 hours.
That's the
48 hours before an election.
Yeah.
They don't allow that.
There's a 29-day period, I believe, by state law. They were supposed to be done on October 5th.
Right.
And what happened, which what the spike represents, I know the numbers because I've been doing so many presentations. That 1 week, they registered, I believe, 155,000 people in a single week, right before the deadline. The day of the deadline, they registered 46,000 people. And then they came up with this thing because there was some kind of glitch that brought the website
Well,
down.
some kind of glitch.
Yeah, and then they said that, oh, COVID, so we need to extend the period of 24 hours, registration period, 24 hours. And in that 24 hours, they put in an additional 22,000 people registered.
Yeah.
And it just like, when I do marketing data, nothing made sense. Like, it was like, where did these people come from that they're all stacked in here at the last minute like that? And most importantly, when we dived into that spike, almost 80% of those people that registered at the last minute voted. So it was like, okay, let me get this straight. I'm a procrastinator.
They waited that long and then
I'm a procrastinator and waited to the last minute.
Right.
And then somehow within a small, tiny frame of 28 days, they were registered with the workload that the supervisor of elections had to work through. They were registered, they got a mail-in ballot, and somehow that mail-in ballot got back in time.
Yeah.
It didn't make any sense.
The ghost registrations
Exactly,
Dr.
yeah.
Frank talks about.
Yep.
But like this other document, basically it's a number of pages, but I mean you have certain addresses in Florida, in Pensacola. I mean, there's just enormous number of people all registered at the same place.
Yeah, my background being in address cleaning, I was able to go through state government records because we were looking for duplicates. So with my process that I learned over the years, I'm able to quickly fold addresses together and see, for example, how many people were voting from the same address. That was the first analysis after that count. And then things like jumped out at us that there was a courthouse in Appaloosa had close to 10,000 people registered there. 80% of them
In one building.
in a public building. It's a courthouse.
And that's their registration.
Yeah, they were using that as their residential, and then their mailing address was to an RV park that was down the street.
Well, that was all the 10,000 homeless people.
Well, they say that, but I mean, it's like they went to an RV park down the street, and then that was a forwarding address.
Yeah.
So it's like, come on, there's no way to track these people down. Where's their residential address? Like, why didn't they use the
absolutely.
RV park as their residential?
10,000.
And some other thing, yeah.
That was the number that was the difference in Arizona for Trump Biden, and here in Florida, 10,001.
And then the
signed.
most troubling one after that was the Miami Supervisor of Elections building. The reason it was troubling is because their address came up with only 5,000 at first. Wow. But when you look, I don't know if this is the one right here.
Yeah.
If you look at those addresses, they purposely put letters to fraudulently change the address because these aren't real addresses.
Wow.
They put a letter C, D, E, F, G to make the addresses unique and essentially hide people in there. And when you put that all together, it comes out to about 11,000 people.
What about deceased people?
Deceased is probably the one thing per the laws on the book in Florida that they are supposed to look at. But when we looked into their training records, they're only looking for people that are over 115 years old.
That's all.
Yeah.
That's it.
So I mean, that's the whole thing. With the supervisor elections that we've talked to, it's nearly impossible to get them to act on cleaning these things because the other thing is we have right now is a blackout window from the end of May, I believe it is, all the way through to the elections. They are not allowed to clean anything off the voter rolls. So if you look back at this spike, all that stuff basically happens here, and then they all vote and it's counted as voting, and then they clean them off after the election. And then the game plays the next election.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
This is incredible information.
It is.
It reminds me of Dinesh D'Souza's movie, Patrick Byrne's movie.
Yes.
Once again, they're just playing fast and loose with the electronic machines.
Yeah.
And you're an expert, and it's been all your life in tech, high tech, and you know beyond a shadow of doubt, you can't have just a CDE version all the way to GN 2700 Northwest 87th Avenue, Doral, Miami-Dade.
Because they're using fraudulent addresses, and that's the supervisor of elections building doing that.
Can the new Secretary of State potentially take a look at this and put a stop?
Because the thing is that we found out is that unlike what we believe is that our local supervisor elections have mostly no control. This is all dictated down from the divisions of elections, which I believe is Miriam Matthews that runs that. And then basically that is like literally they tell the supervisor elections, the software controls it, the reports are pushed down. They are basically instructed to do what they're told because the majority of registrations even are coming from the Department of Motor Vehicles.
Yeah.
Nearly 80 to 90% of motor vehicles. And I have a surprising discovery that just came out of that. I don't know if we're already deep into this.
No, go right ahead.
So one of the worst things that like it shocked me even was I used to develop software for state governments, and there's stringent rules that we have to fill out their forms exactly the way they have it, because these forms are all passed by Congress.
Yes.
So one of the original forms, if you download it, is the motor voter, or the first question on it says, "Are you a U.S. citizen? Yes or no?" Okay. I've tracked down the training brochures that go out from the Department of State to motor vehicles.
Taxpayer.
Yeah, and the software
Funded.
never asks if you're a U.S. citizen. It automatically registers you to vote,
Regardless.
regardless. There's not even a question on
Okay,
there.
that needs to be brought up to the Secretary of State
Yeah, absolutely.
right away, ASAP.
Absolutely.
Along with the 10,000 in one address voters that are registered one address.
That's
one
ice,
big tall
that's
high
ice
rise.
cubes in an iceberg. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
I wish I could say that I was the only one.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming on District Command Radio, AUN-TV, which stands for America Uncensored
Yes.
Television Network. And so we're getting the facts from a sleuther, someone who used their FOIAs and information that is not easily obtained, but is obtainable legally.
And we're lucky because in Florida, with the Sunshine Laws, we at least have access to this stuff. But in other states, it's harder to get that information.
But this is being replicated across the country in all 50 states.
We believe so. So when I share out these patterns that we're seeing, other states are seeing the same thing.
Wow.
Well, thank you for coming on, Kris Jurski,
Yes.
with the People's Audit. We the people. This is Constitution Day.
That's right.
And thank you, and God bless for all the work you're
One
doing.
more thing, that if on this,
Yes, on the card.
if they do scan, we've set it up that if you scan this, you can see who's voting from your house. Because one of the things with that address combination was we wanted to see, because we had lots of people saying that they bought and sold their house and the previous owners were still voting.
Aha.
So with that little card, basically that 3D scan, going to the website, you can put in your last name, your zip code, and your date of birth, and it will show your voting record for the last
In this case,
2006.
speak the URL for this one.
It's going to be fl.the-peoples, all plural, -audit.org.
fl.the-peoples-audit.org.
Yep.
Well, thank you once again for coming on the show.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Thanks for giving me the word out. Thank you very much.
Orlando, Florida.
Good work.